Well, good morning. It really is an honor and privilege to be here. We're excited that we can share our mission trip to Cuba with you this morning. And already I have felt the love that this church has for the Lord. We had an awesome Sabbath school class here, and I know the kids also had a great one in the neighbor. But to share the love of God with people who believe the same way, that's what Sabbath is about. And we've got a nice, peaceful, quiet place here, and yet we know there are many Adventists throughout the Caribbean that are struggling this morning with their lives, struggling to find clean water. And so it's really nice to hear you pray for our other family of God. God is love, and as His people, we want to reflect that love to others, just like Jesus did when He was here on this earth. And like we read in our scripture, that Christ dwells in our hearts through faith. It does take faith sometimes to love the way Jesus wants us to. He wants us to be rooted and grounded in love, and that we may be able to comprehend with all the saints the width, the height, the depth of the love of God. And so as we as a church know that it's not just about taking in Scripture, reading God's Word, but then it's about serving others, sharing with others. And by doing both of those things, that's when we truly know the fullness of God's love. And in and of ourselves, we cannot do anything good. The Bible says there is not one that has any goodness. We cannot do good without God. But when we're filled with His love, then we certainly are able to reflect God's love to others. As Byron gets our PowerPoint up and going. It works here. I know it works because we went through it. So, like I said, we're here to share about our trip to Cuba. There are other denominations that are going to Cuba and sharing God's Word. But it is our desire that the right message is given, the right truth, the entire message. And so when we were given the opportunity this last April, we didn't hesitate. We said right away, yes, we will go. Then it's up to God. If He decides to close the door, to change plans, that's His will. But we were willing to go. So it all began about a year ago on vacation. We were down in Mexico with my sister and brother-in-law. The four of us gone to get a little rest, recreation, and be revived. And we came across on the beach, right near the place where we were staying, there was this refugee makeshift vessel that had landed right there on the beach just a few days beforehand. And when I say makeshift, it was made out of styrofoam. People had collected what they could. So sheets of styrofoam stacked together, banded with some metal, and the sails were tarps and things, and we've got a picture of it coming up in just a few minutes.
Won't allow us to enter.
And when they capture your attention,
We need prayer. That happens a lot.
that's it. Will we need to go through my computer? Would that work better?
That's what I thought too.
So anyways, if you came across something like that on your walk down the beach, wouldn't you be kind of curious and interested to know what that was all about? We had to inquire to find out that it had come from Cuba. We didn't know at the time where it had come from. We thought, this is strange. Is this just some fisherman's, vessel? And we found out that there was at least a dozen of them on that boat, and it was a small boat. And they had a little makeshift metal container where they could have fire and cook their food. We don't know how long they were out on that vessel, but we do know that they had come without papers and that they were being chased and hunted by the police because, of course, they were there illegally. So it's like the question being, why were they leaving Cuba? What's going on in Cuba that people want to leave? And so that was one of the things we wanted to find out, and we actually did end up finding out when we were down there. There was like a period of time, a whole year, when Cubans were allowed to, if they could get to the mainland of the United States, they would be granted immunity. Steve and I were invited by God's Hands Ministries out of Salt Lake City to join a team going to Cuba. We were hoping for about 30, it turned out to be about 26. And this was an amazing team. It would have been nice if we'd all known each other, but we only knew the leader and his wife. And there was 8 of us that left from Salt Lake. Then we had people that were coming from Colorado. I think there was 4 of them from Colorado. We had people from Maryland that were joining. And then we had a doctor come from Mexico. And so, and Utah, we had some more ministers from there. So from all over Texas, we had a nurse come from Texas and California. And we were short one minister because we were going to do evangelism in the evening at 5 different churches. During the day, we were going to do a construction project, a health expo, and children's street ministry is what they call it. And so we wanted the 5 preachers. Well, the one from Utah couldn't make it, so we were down to 4. And we didn't know how that was going to work, but you know, when you're on a mission trip, you just know God's going to answer many prayers in amazing ways. And when we Steve and I drove to Utah to fly out of Salt Lake, then we flew to Orlando, and from Orlando, we met up with a few more of our team, but it wasn't until we actually landed in Havana that the whole 26 of us got together. And lo and behold, this lady from Puerto Rico, her name is Liz Polanca. She is a great evangelist. She loves the Lord. She sings, she plays the guitar, and she joined us last minute on invite from the doctor from Mexico. So now we had our 5th speaker, and she spoke the language. You know, it's really important on how to speak the language. So that was our team, God's Hands Ministry. You know, it was good they bought us T-shirts that were the same color, so that we kind of looked a little more uniform and not such a motley crew. But God can use us. He uses average people most of the time. And we were significantly and spectacularly average going down to Cuba. Why did God choose Steve and me? I don't know. Like I said, the vision that we had that intrigued us started when we found that little makeshift vessel on our trip in vacation down in Mexico. And yet, we hadn't even thought until that point that we would ever go to Cuba. And it made me think of, in the Bible, the story of Paul. You remember he was on his first missionary journey, and he had gone to many of the different churches, encouraging the believers, and he had planned to go back to some of those places to strengthen them. And then he was given a vision at night, and he saw this man begging. The man was saying to him in his dream, "Please come over to Macedonia and help us." And at that point, Paul knew exactly what he had to do. He had to just abandon his ideas and go where God wanted him to go. And you know, that's how I felt about our trip to Cuba. God had given me this vision through this crazy makeshift vessel. And I had no hesitation in my heart where God wanted me when our friends asked us to join the team. We've got some really neat pictures. I think the kids are going to love them. So, out of the 5 churches, there was one that was in the place where we were staying, and we stayed in Santiago de Las Vegas. Then there was a church in Santa Clara, and that was about 40 minutes away. Santa Maria was about 20 minutes away. Managua, about 15 minutes away. That was the church Steve and I were asked to join in the evenings. And then there was the church in Havana. So in Managua, we had a Utah pastor by the name of Ryan Hibetzel and his wife Renee. And when they chose the teams to go to the different churches, you know, we just knew God was in charge of that too, and that He would bless us, whichever church we were asked to help in. And it was last minute when they asked me to do the children's program at the church, and I love that. I said yes. I love kids. Kids are excited. They're eager to learn. They're fun to be around. A lot of energy. So I said yes, I would do the children's program, and they had the story outline, they had the colors and everything I needed. So that made it nice. So the first evening we're at the church in Managua. Pastor Ryan gets up to speak. And he has to speak through a translator. And the translators that were given to each of the speakers were from the seminary, which was a godsend. We were actually staying right near the seminary in Santiago de Las Vegas. And I won't forget Pastor Ryan's sermon because he talked about Zacchaeus. And my ears perked up. Zacchaeus, good grief, you know. Who talks much about Zacchaeus in a sermon? You hear him in the kids' Sabbath school. So I wanted to hear what he said about Zacchaeus. And he was talking about the people following Jesus, wanting to hear God's, Jesus' stories. And Zacchaeus was no different. He was driven by the desire to see Jesus and to hear what Jesus had to say. And he went to the extreme. This is a dignified man. Even though people didn't like him, he had a very respectable job as a tax collector. He was wealthy. And what did he think to do? Kids, you remember the story. What did Zacchaeus do to see Jesus? He did. He climbed up into a tree. He didn't want to be seen. I think the sycamore, right, tree has lots of branches and leaves. I think he wanted to just wanted to see Jesus and kind of get an idea of what he was saying. Why did everyone want to hear and listen to Jesus? What was different? I mean, they had churches then. They had great temples, synagogues. They had great men, leaders in the church, the Pharisees and Sadducees. But no one was going to listen to them. They wanted to hear what Jesus had to say. And the difference was the fact that Jesus was offering a message of hope. And that's what drew the people to him. After that, Pastor Ryan went on and gave his own testimony of his life story and how hope made a difference in his life, whereas now he's a minister of the gospel. And, just sharing with everybody he can the story of hope. And that's what it's all about. For our friends like Dennis, who's struggling, if he doesn't know that story of hope, there is hope, Andy. And that's our privilege to share with him. And we can never be afraid, never want to give up when we have the message in the Bible. And so, what a great start to tell these people in Cuba who are so affected by their past history. Trust is such an issue to them because of the way they've been treated, how they've been so suppressed in the past by not having religious freedom. They could meet in homes, and they did. And there's been the Adventist church and groups meeting in Cuba throughout the whole years where they were under the rule. Okay, it happens. One forgets the name of the Cuban leader. We all know it. Castro, there we go. So they held on to stay there. In fact, the seminary that used to be in Cuba was taken away to Mexico during their time of the revolution. And now it is back in Cuba. They have 150 students, and what they're learning there. And they're the future of Cuba.
So,
Isn't that interesting? We're going to go through. That's the team heading over there. And those are some of the supplies we collected before we went. We knew that we were going to be doing the health expo and that medications were short there. So we collected what we could to take with us. Here's our first entry to Cuba. And the welcome sign on the left, and look at those cars that are our transportation. Everything you have heard about Cuba and their old cars is true. That's what they use. These are from the 50s. We've taken a few pictures so that everyone can see the great transportation we had. We loaded things on top of the roof and in the trunks, and I think all of us got into 3 cars. This is the San Jose Marti Airport, right in Havana, which is where we flew into. And I imagine all those palm trees are probably flattened this morning. Havana was treated very well. They kept up the roads, they kept up many of the buildings in Havana, to the detriment of maybe some of the smaller towns and communities throughout Cuba. You know you're in Cuba when you see signs like that. There you go, Fidel Castro signs everywhere. And they had a lot of the statues and busts of the official leaders in many of the gardens of the people, and as you went along the roads. So this is our accommodations at the seminary. And we were fortunate. We were looked after very well. We had air-conditioned rooms. We had nice hot showers. We had the nice rooftop for our worship. There's a little boy who came to greet us. We love kids, and the kids came over to say hi, and of course he wondered if we had anything for him, so we gave him a little matchbox car. If you go on a mission trip, fill your pockets for stuff, to give. Such a joy in giving. This is the room that the lady, one of the 4 of us ladies stayed in. Actually, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 ladies. This is Liz, the one from Puerto Rico. This lady is the doctor's wife in the corner, and she came with a walker. She had had surgery on her legs, and she was using a walker, and yet she came to do the children's program at one of the churches. God can use anybody who's willing to go. Don't let yourself stop you. Lots of little bicycle shops. This one was right nearby. You wouldn't think it was a shop, would you? It looks more like a chicken run. But that's somebody's livelihood right in the front of their house. They had a little bicycle shop and everyone knew where they were.
This was our first day here. This guy was up, that tree's probably 60 or 70 feet tall, and he's up there collecting, what's the name of that fruit?
Mamane.
Mamane.
Anybody had a mamane fruit? No.
So he's got a little basket on the end of his stick there, and he catches in the basket and then passes it down.
Things like that, these are 30 feet with this big stick. And to have us come over and watch, he loved it. Take interest in people and you'll win their hearts and respect. There's horse-driven carts everywhere you go, and I love that. Wherever you happen to be, you would soon hear clip-clop, little donkey and little horse feet going down the streets. Here's some of the farm fields. They have good farms. They do a lot of agriculture there because they have to supplement their diet. They're given rations. The government gives them certain things like beans and rice, oil, eggs. But then they grow their vegetables. And they keep their community gardens if they use them.
We were over at the seminary, which is right next door, one of our first mornings, and they pricked bread. Is it breadfruit?
But we had lots of good produce every day, and the Cubans eat very healthfully. You don't see very many overweight Cubans, and I think it's a wonderful thing. They're eating fresh fruits. Everybody has fruit trees, coconut trees, and it's just abundant, and they're so willing to share. It's very, very nice for us to go over there, and they fed us, they cooked for us, and we were well taken care of. This is our water supply.
And it's a quarter of a mile away probably, and each room had about 5 or 6 of these big jugs. And every morning we would go and get our water, drinking water.
The next few slides are just slides of the seminary, which I had talked about already. They do have a very nice church. They have a dormitory. Around the campus is like a circular driveway. They have a beautiful bougainvillea. They have a nice entryway here, and Maranatha has been over there, and they helped build their church. So Maranatha has done some wonderful things.
So we actually found the press where they do all the printing for Sabbath schools and whatnot there. And this is the front entryway for that. And having worked at the press for quite a while, I was kind of interested in that, so I got to go look around a little bit. So this is their main room. They've got 2 or 3 little presses, nothing like we have here. They've got some paper cutters, everything on a smaller scale than what we got here, but they're able to print all the Sabbath schools and lesson quarterlies and whatnot for Cuba.
So Stephen, does the government watch carefully what they print, or since it's in a communist nation, are there more rules than we would be here? Do they
I don't know. I think they do. And there was some neighbors that actually turned in that there was a bunch of different people that were coming and going, and so we started getting picked up. When we go out in the mornings, we started getting picked up down the road rather than in front of the place where we were staying. So there are people that watch there still and whatnot. This is a press and a folder. And this is their shipping department. Once they get everything all printed and whatnot, they bring it into this room, and they say, yeah, this is our shipping department from here. This is just a cutter, a paper cutter, where they trim the bound volumes and whatnot. And this was the manager. And they're very happy and proud to show you around. And
no computers involved, right?
no, they had 2 computers upstairs. They have the Pacific Press. We have 2 graphic designers. They had 3. They had printers and whatnot there, but they had run out of ink, so the printers were no good. And the paper and stuff, when it came in, they would get a little stack like this, and it might come one week or it may not. And so, where us, we have all we need here. There, they had just a little bit, and it may not even arrive for a few weeks.
You can't go to Cuba without trying coconuts. So we were so happy when they came over and brought us coconuts for 25 cents. That was a good deal. Here's some of the food that we have. I told you how scrumptious it was. And potato salad they do make over there, but they don't put in the salad dressing. So they have fresh potatoes with the eggs, and I think that's about it. Some seasonings and a healthier potato salad. There's a picture of our team. So I think the next few slides are pictures of the countryside. There's fruit stands that you see as you drive along. Lush tropical landscape. They do get a lot of rain there. Here's some of the buildings. They haven't been able to upkeep their buildings. That's one thing we really notice. See the nurse uniform? I had to put that one in. The cap, the white uniform there. Okay, so this is our transportation vehicle, this little truck van, and it was going to take us around to see our 5 different communities and churches where we would be doing our evangelism. And as you can see, most of the churches are homes converted into a church building. So depending on the needs, this one was a very long, thin church.
It was probably about 12 or 14 foot wide was all. So about the width of the pews, and maybe almost as long as our church here.
And the pastor bought the house next door, and so the kids had their Sabbath school on the front porch of the pastor's house.
Oh, this is the the most awesome thing about Cuba and their traffic lights. So you come up to a traffic light and it's red, like the same as here, but it has a countdown on it. So you have 29 seconds, 28, 27, 26, and so you know exactly when it's going to turn green. And the same with when it's green, it has a countdown on it.
I think those are the kids in their uniforms waiting to be picked up on the bus. Bus is a huge method of transportation. Most of the Cubans, they either have a bicycle or they walk or they use the bus. Very few have cars.
Gas station.
This is approaching the second church in Santa Maria. This is the church here on the left. They were meeting under a kind of a tarp. And outside they've been using these benches and that's set up for 5-7 years.
10 years.
And that first building with the cement blocks, that was their church that they were working on, but it had been going on for what, 3 years? And this is all they had.
So when we were going over there, I was doing the building project, and we were supposed to be building with where we were staying, that we were supposed to be building other rooms and stuff there, but the government had put a stop to it, so all of a sudden we didn't have a building project. So when we were going around to all these churches and whatnot, we saw this one that was partly done. And they said they didn't have money, and so that's why it wasn't finished. It had a dirt floor inside. And so at that point, we started thinking this would make a perfect project for us. And so this is the building project that we actually worked on. We got the floor in, we got a baptistry done, and within 10 days of working on it, we had a baptism there on Sabbath. 5 people were baptized, so that was kind of neat. We didn't really know what we were going to do after the government had closed down our initial project, and this one was probably better for us than what the initial one was.
So here we have on the left Felipe, our chiropractor that was part of our team. As soon as we arrived somewhere, he would find a table, he'd clear it off, roll lickety-split, and he'd look around for somebody to do a back or neck adjustment on. So there he is working on the pasture.
So this is when we were in there that first day. We went around to all the different churches and toured all the churches to see where everybody was going to be at. So that was kind of neat. So this is we were looking at the church on the inside. A little different than the way we do it, but yeah. So this was the outside of the church. It had some banana trees and whatnot in the back.
And the little house at the back is where the head elder stayed.
Head deacon.
Head deacon.
So they were 3 or 4 years on this church because they didn't have any money. And I guess we were one of the first Americans that came to see them. We had $1,000 to work with, and so we gave them $1,000. The head elder was actually a contractor. And everything over there is done through the black market. You can't go to a store and buy something. So we gave him $1,000 on a Friday, I think. By Sunday, he had materials and stuff there ready for us. Some of the things you cannot even purchase, though. We ran out of rebar partway through. And they had this big cement column, kind of like our cement light posts that we have here sometimes. It was probably about 40 feet long and maybe 2 feet square. And we beat that thing with sledgehammers for probably 6 or 8 hours to get a piece of rebar out of there to use for our baptismal tank. We said, we got money, we can just, we'll give you some money to go and buy some more. But the contractor said there is no rebar around to be had. So we beat that thing probably 6 hours. 5 or 6 guys we would trade off every 2 minutes on the sledgehammer. And it was 100 degrees outside.
Okay, we're on to the third town here. This is Managua. This was the little town where we went every evening for evangelistic meetings. Then just down the street was the police military headquarters, I guess. And they weren't allowing any of us to take pictures. So I thought, well, I'll pretend I'm taking pictures of the shops and the motorcycle. And we got a picture of the headquarters. Okay, here's our church. As you can see, this is another house converted into a church. And it had 3 levels. The church sanctuary on the main level. At the back is where the pastor lived, in a couple of rooms. Then the second level had a balcony. It actually looked kind of like a theater church. And then they had a classroom in the back. And then they had a winding stairway going up to the roof. And see how they have a nice fence around the rooftop? That's where I got to meet with the kids at night. It was nice and cool up there. And we loved singing. And we knew if we sang loud enough that the police down the road would hear us. We wanted them to. That's Pastor Johan and his wife, Raisa. Very young couple. They've been there 8 months in that church. They were delighted to have Pastor Ryan come and speak every night. It was such a boost to the people there. Like Steve said, in Santa Maria, they had never had any evangelism, no special speakers come to that church. And that church was a divided church. The previous pastor, I think, had made some poor decisions. This was perfect timing. Only God could have done that. This church is the one in Santiago de Las Vegas. So this was like half a mile from where we stayed. This was the bigger church. And, we went there for a Friday night young people's meeting. And it was so fun to see how they did things. They had a really good interaction. They had everyone sit in their birth month. So you're with people you probably aren't your closest friends. And then they said, now I want you to find as many things as you have in common with that group. And then afterwards they shared and who had the most. But it was a great way to get to know each other. And they had beautiful music there too. Now on to the last church in Havana. To the streets up and down from the church. There's the entryway in. This was the biggest church. I think it seats like 500, is that correct? And this was going to be the main project. So
after our initial project was stopped, we were looking everywhere for another project, and the pastors were wanting us from Cuba. They thought this would be a good one. So we sent, I think I sent a couple guys over there for 2 or 3 days, and they ended up coming to the little church that we were working on. That was the project that actually suited us the best, and we were able to feel like you're helping them more than helping a big, huge church.
And as you can see, you basically had to be a welder to do that kind of work, and they had their welders. So Andy would have done real good there. Look what I mean about the buildings really not being kept up. And in downtown Havana, we were there when the rain came, and within minutes, you had 6 inches of water rushing down the streets. I can just imagine what it looks like today. Maybe a couple, 3 feet of water. So I was standing on the corner waiting for our bus, and a young boy, probably 13, 14, came up to me, wanted my water bottle. Just something that they didn't have. They don't have much there. It's sad. They would love the electronics too, I know. Okay, now we're heading into more of the downtown area of Havana, and that's the big stadium, some of the big high-rises, and we'll just quickly go through these slides. More government buildings. What we were doing on this particular day was going to the market. They don't have any little 7-Eleven stores, souvenir stores, just you couldn't buy anything. So we actually had to go into Havana to a special marketplace. We were given 2 hours to shop. But look how beautiful the colored buildings are. This was a newsstand, and everything in the newspaper, radio, TV, everything's got operated by the government, so they make sure they screen what is said and written. And that newsstand was only open for about an hour, and everything was sold out. This is a look inside the marketplace, and of course they have wonderful artists. They do woodwork, they do paintings, It's a nice looking car. The owner had just stopped, just as we were walking by. He stopped his car, ran inside, and came out with a birthday cake. They have good cakes and pastries in Cuba.
So one of my friends at our church had given some donations for people over there. We were taking lessons over. And he's about my age, but he's had an accident and he's crippled and in a wheelchair. So the one thing that he wanted was a picture of a 57 Chevy, and I had no idea what they looked like. So I looked for the first week for a 57 Chevy, and I finally found one. So this was for Jim.
And I thought, that's my favorite one. See that little yellow round one? What do you think the name of that little automobile is, Brody? I heard a putt-putt. What does it look like? It looks like a bug. They call them a cocoa, like a little coconut. I want to ride one of those next time I go back. And then again, horse-drawn carts. It's just like going back into the 50s and 60s. It really is. And that part of it was very nice, very peaceful. People walking outside their homes, sitting outside their homes, interacting. You know, that part is good. We're so close now inside homes. It's hard to reach people. I mean, you might see people in the grocery store, but someone mentioned, you know, who talks, who smiles at each other at the grocery store. But, so not all progress is progress. But in Cuba, it was very nice. Lots of people out. And, yeah, they would wonder and look at you and wonder, why are you there? It gave you opportunity to witness.
Meeting, kind of worship each morning, and share some experiences maybe from the day before.
Well, another chiropractor time. At the morning health expos, we would do blood pressure checks, blood sugars, and hand out some of the over-the-counter medicines. And also one of the nurses, Joy is her name, she had brought all these reading glasses and must have had at least 100. That's a great thing. They went like hotcakes because people, they do have health care and it's free over there, but sometimes they have to wait a long time for things. And it seemed like a lot of people my age and older have no glasses just for reading. And they have their Bibles, but you know, if you can't see to read, it's kind of difficult. So they were delighted to get those. After we saw the need for vision care, one of the pastors, actually another pastor from Utah is pretty much blind. He can hardly see light and shadows. And he's the one that's heading up the vision mission trip in this coming February. So that works out. We hope to go back.
So this is our church. When we went there first, there was piles of dirt everywhere, and we moved one pile that was probably 6 or 8 feet high and that wide also. They came up with one wheelbarrow. They had a hole in the bottom of it. We had to put plastic over it so everything wouldn't fall out. This is what it looked like though when we went there first. Oh, there's our wheelbarrow right there.
You never see such a rickety old wheelbarrow.
So from our group, I think I had 8 guys that were working with me, and this was one of the best things. This was the head elder, and they would bring us about 10 o'clock after we worked for 2 hours. They'd bring us rolls or something. And that was kind of cool. Here's a little story about him. He was the chief. He was the guy that did the construction and everything. And I think the whole 2 weeks that I was there, I never saw him lift a hand to do anything. And what do you think of that? Bad thoughts, right? So Sabbath, our last Sabbath there, we went to church there for the baptism and everything, and we were sitting in the deacon's little living room, and we were talking and stuff, and we got to meet the wives and everything at that point. And all this time I was thinking, man, this guy, he doesn't do a thing. And so he told me a little, or his wife somebody there anyways told a little story about a couple of years ago he had gotten hit by a train. That kind of changed everything, your whole thoughts on him. Just some more hauling out junk and stuff.
We had a set of twins. They weren't Adventists, but they had been invited by some friends to come, Ben and Sam. And they were both engineers. And they were so happy to just be part of this team and building. This was at a time when they were waiting for the cement trucks to arrive, or cement truck and car, whatever was carrying the supplies. And so we're looking around, well, what else can we help you do? You know, you've got a big church building. What about the painting? They said, okay, yeah, would you help us paint? And so we said, yes. So do you have the supplies? They had two old paintbrushes, and then they mixed up some primer, which was like a...
Yeah, what we used for that was calcium and water, and they would mix it, and we put about 5 coats of that on cement walls, and then they would paint after that. So it was just like water, putting it on.
So we took turns, because reaching up, you can get kind of sore. And so they worked really hard and fast for 10 minutes, and then the next 2 would go up and work really. The deacons, boys here, they wanted to help. And so Daddy looked around to see what they could find, and lo and behold, there was some styrofoam. So he broke up 2 pieces of styrofoam, and those boys couldn't have been happier, painting like Daddy, but with styrofoam. You know, we limit ourselves. Some on the team, they were saying, oh, if only we had Home Depot, if only we had known, we could have brought this, and we could have brought that. And it was like they weren't prepared to do anything because they didn't have. And it's like God asks us to use what He's given to us at that time. And that was a big lesson to me to learn. Just use what you have.
So the concrete, when we mix that, we would mix it in the middle of the street, or they had a little concrete pad there, and they would bring in all the dirt and or the concrete and the gravel and whatnot, and mix it there. Our last Friday, before our Sabbath, we were supposed to have the baptism. We were mixing it right in the middle of the street where the cars go down and everything, and we got a rainstorm all of a sudden. And when it rains there, it rains hard. So we kind of watched our concrete being washed down everybody ran with buckets and whatever we could find to get it in. We got most of it in, but it almost stopped having the baptism because we were trying to get all the floor done in time for the chairs and stuff to get on there. Oh, this is the pouring of the baptismal tank. And they made lunch for us each day there at the site. Oh, here's our concrete in the middle of the street. This is the main road in front of the church, and they would just mix the concrete there.
I think the whole town knew what was going on at the Adventist church. Why did all people from America come and help them?
Here's bringing in, anytime we got supplies, they'd bring it in the back of the car or something. Paint and stuff getting delivered there.
And isn't that also how you moved a lot of the concrete, was in buckets?
Yeah.
Manual labor.
This is Unil, one of the young people we work with. We email him back and forth. He's showing the tile. They're proud of the stuff that they got. They had tile picked out for the baptistry, and he wanted to just sit there and show what it looked like in the baptistry. This is the head deacon. His name was Ray, with one of his grandchildren. Just bringing them back from school on the back of his bike. In the back of this place, sometimes we didn't get supplies right away, so we had 8 guys there, and what to do with them. Well, there was a trench that they had started digging to where the septic tank would go. And we probably spent, I don't know, 30 hours digging a 20-foot trench there. It was solid rock, and they had one pitchfork and a big sledgehammer, so that's what they got to trade off on that. A tarantula that was out there one sunning himself. This was the coolest little lizard I ever saw. He had this thing on his neck, and every second it would go in and then it'd pop out, and go in and pop out. Jeanette mentioned we had two twins, these guys here. That was my roommates. And then coming to help us summer mornings, there was two other twins there. And they were a lot shorter. One of the smaller twins was baptized, was one of the guys that was baptized. So that was kind of neat. And the little kids, they would come up, they would want to have pictures taken with the two twins there. They were 28, 29, and real good with kids. So the little ones would want to have pictures taken with them all the time. There's our concrete going in.
Yeah, those are just our vehicles getting ready to go out for the evening meetings. Reuben was our translator at the Managua Church, and there's Pastor Ryan. I kind of already inserted his little story on Zacchaeus, so we can just move past. There's a group of my kids. So like the first night I had 15 kids, and I said, you know, my program's basically just for 4-year-olds to 12 at the most, you know, because I don't think I can hold interest for the older ones. So the first night, the older ones had to stay downstairs, and I heard there was cries going on, and just everyone was, all the kids, older ones were so sad. So the next night I said, well, they're welcome to come if they want to. I won't exclude anybody. So I had the 15 and 16-year-olds up there. And, you know, that was God's way of helping, too. Sometimes I had a translator to help me with the stories, and sometimes I did not because they had to go downstairs. And so then I'd use the older teenagers to have the songs. And we had a little talent show one night. And here we have the kids wearing their Burger King crowns, which we converted into heavenly crowns, and the kids loved that. This is a luminescent beetle. The eyes are green neon color, and I thought the little boy was showing it to me was just a plastic one, and then when it jumped and I screamed, they thought that was pretty terrific. And I was teaching them about the stars, and we see the same stars in the heavens as they see in Cuba, and I tell them about the kids and my family here. They love anything that connects us.
So this was our final Sabbath morning. Remember, we had poured concrete in the floor the night before. And so the church members got up at like, I don't know, 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning and moved all the pews and everything in here. And they had everything ready for the baptism. Some of the college kids from, here's the inside of the church.
And they had the seminary students come and sing, and those are the ones that you heard from the music.
They sang really good on their own, but when you put 6 or 7 of them together in an all-cement building, oh wow, it's pretty cool. There's the baptistry. So they filled the water's not there all the time. The water comes on at like 12 o'clock until 6 o'clock or something. So they filled the baptistry at 6 o'clock the night before. It hadn't been sealed yet because we had just got done finishing it the day before. And so by the time 9 o'clock came around, when everybody got there, we had about, maybe 16 or 18 inches of water in there. So they moved up the baptism for the beginning of the service instead of at the end, so they'd have enough water. So. This is the little twin there. This is the head elder, the guy that was the contractor, and his wife. This is the blind pastor here. When you go on a group like this, you don't really know what people are like, or you have never met them before. And so this guy is the head.
Pastor Matt.
He's the head of this group or whatever. And he's blind. And you get up, wave your hand in front of him just to see if you really, because he walks around like he's not blind at all. It's amazing. We were going through customs, I remember. And the customs guy was wanting, you have to go through one at a time, just one person there. and the customs guys wanted him to take a picture. So he was standing over here and the camera was here. They said, move to the picture. And he moved around a little bit and he was facing the camera from the back of his head. And then I knew he really was blind. And so one of us, I went back and helped him get in the right place and everything. But you wouldn't believe it that he was blind, the way he got around and stuff.
Pastor Abel and his wife Isabel, very happy. I mean, the people were just smiling ear to ear. They couldn't believe the way God had answered their prayer and getting their church done. After that service, we were taken by bus, if you could call it that.
Our bus.
See, when the front of your vehicle is a different color from the back of your vehicle, you probably should be a little concerned. That's quite common in Cuba. Your car parts are all from different makes. But we headed out in that vehicle. They wanted to take us to a nice location, a beach area, just to show us the other side of things. So this gave us a view of some more of the terrain, the mountains. They had caves, I guess, in those mountains. And when you move away from the Havana region, it's a lot less congested. Our bus did break down, by the way, for about an hour. We had to wait. And when they found some string and some plastic twine or something, they put it all together and it lasted. It got us to where we needed to go. And I think we're going to close with just some pictures here of the ocean.
This is oil wells. They do have oil there.
They support themselves. 40% of their needs come from Cuba, from their own diesel oil, and the rest they were getting from Venezuela. However, with the troubles going on down there, they were not able to get their diesel, and so Russia came to help. So we don't know where all that'll leave. So they do have some beautiful beaches there. Here we are unloading. We had 2 days just to enjoy there. Some beautiful aqua-colored, turquoise-colored water and sand. One evening, Steve and I went out to eat, and then afterwards we thought, well, let's go for a walk on the beach. As we went for a walk on the beach, you know, some people just throw their plastic cups down, and I don't like that. So I'm picking up all the plastic cups. I'm just going to put them in the garbage and not say anything. And then I get approached by the security guard, and he says, "What are you doing?" And I said, well, in my broken Spanish, "This is my beach. My father owns everything, and I want to keep it clean." And he is so impressed. He says, "Really? No tourist does this?" And I says, "Yes, but it belongs to my Father in heaven." He says, "Yeah, I understand." And he spoke a little English, but not much. And he says, he said, "I have a question." And at that time, we had some of our Spanish-speaking group, walk out onto the beach. And I beckoned him over, and I said, "He has a question, and I'm not understanding it." And so he wanted to know why there were so many churches, so many different denominations. And so we had a chance to share with him a little bit. And then we asked him if we could sing a song to him. And he thought that was pretty amazing. And so it was the song of hope, hope in Jesus. And then he had more questions and more questions. And I'm praying, as the storm clouds are coming overhead, and I'm praying, "Lord, don't let it storm right now. This man needs some more information." And I don't know if I'm able to give him what he needs. I'm pretty sure I didn't. Right then, doctor from Mexico walks onto the beach, right at that moment, and beckoned him over, and he must have given him a good 20, 30-minute Bible study right there on the beach. Just what was needed. So that young man heard the message. Here we have the sign with the Cuban flag, the yellow flag going. Everything in Cuba is go for Jesus right now. Salvation is what they need to hear. And I think that was my most memorable experience.
So this is our bus ride home, or back to the dormitory. And this is the way most people travel over there. So,
And I think then the last few slides, other than just pictures of the area, is our goodbyes. I think that's it. And goodbyes are always hard, no matter what the circumstances in our lives. But again, the hope we have is what we need to focus on, the hope in Jesus. And He knows that life is so important, so valuable. He wants to give us all life eternal, and it can be ours for the taking. And so that is where I think we'll end. And I just want to thank you for listening to our story of Cuba. I hope you're impressed to continue to serve God in whatever capacity He asks. And if you're heading in one direction and He calls you to do something else, don't hesitate to go. You'll be blessed.